Welcome to Reddissimo, home of great Reddit stories. Don't forget to subscribe now.
Am I wrong for making my son take a paternity test? All names have been changed. This is a mess, and I would appreciate opinions from unbiased people. It was recommended that I post here and another page. IF39 have 2 kids, M17 and F10. When I was 21 I had a one-night stand which resulted in my son Austin, the father, wanting nothing to do with my child. When my son was 3, I met my husband Mark M38. My son adores my husband and calls him father. Austin met his current girlfriend through Mark's best friend Alan, her father. Macy and Austin have been close since they were young and we were all thrilled when we found out they were dating. After we found out, Mark and I sat Austin down and explained that we're happy for him but we needed him to know the importance of safe sex whether it was happening or not. He was disgusted but said he understood and we left it at that. For context, my son is what others describe as shy and soft-spoken. He's really sensitive and takes harsh comments/actions to heart. We thought everything was fine with him until he came home crying. He eventually told us Macy had cheated on him. I was angry and urged my son to leave, but my husband calmed us both and asked to speak with Austin privately. Essentially, he asked Austin what he wanted to do and if he wanted us to stop seeing Macy and her father. Austin said he didn't want that and wanted to work things out with Macy. I was upset but didn't say anything. Ever since that happened, I've hated seeing her around. All I think about when I see her is my son distressed and crying his eyes out. I act cordial around her but I don't like her. Around February, Austin came home looking rather upset again so I sat down with him and asked what's going on. I wasn't expecting to hear him say what he said to me, Macy's pregnant. I was furious. I told him I expected better from him. I also said that before anything happened, he needed to do a paternity test. He was angry that I suggested she cheated again, but I didn't like how she was suddenly pregnant. When Mark came home from work, I filled him in and he was equally upset. We all sat down and discussed it. Austin explained that I demanded a paternity test was done, and Mark wasn't happy to hear that. I explained that she's cheated before, she could have cheated again. That led to a huge argument. Before we all calmed down, I asked if her parents knew. Apparently not, he said she agreed to tell them tonight. And sure enough, about an hour later Mark gets an angry call from Alan demanding that my son marries his daughter, and if Austin refuses, he demands that he pay child support and stay out of this kid's life. Of course, we were all angry and exhausted, so I said that nothing was happening until a paternity test was done and I wasn't taking the word of a cheating little girl. He blew up at us and it was radio silence after the call. Macy was told she can no longer see Austin and he took it out on me. A few weeks ago, Alan contacted us and agreed to do a paternity test. I asked why the sudden change but he ignored me. He said he set up the appointment for May 5th. Austin went with Mark. He said he didn't want to be around me. It stung and I won't lie, it made me cry when he said that. Results finally came in a few nights ago and he isn't the father. He was shattered. Instead of apologizing, he screamed that this was my fault and he'd have never known. He hasn't said much to me since. Maybe I was wrong for making him do a paternity test, but I was only looking out for my son. Was I wrong for making him take a paternity test? Comments. You're not wrong. The girl was a known cheater. Your son was an easy mark. He is young, sensitive, and hurt. This pregnancy would have affected his entire life going forward had he been the father. He will appreciate your insistence on the paternity test after he has a chance to sort his emotions. This pregnancy would have affected his entire life going forward had he been the father. Or pay child support for a child that isn't his just to have her throw that fact in his face 10 years down the road. Finding out now is the best scenario. If he found out years down the line, he would have most likely been angry at no one telling him or helping him find out. He's hurt, and no matter how illogical, he's going to sadly take it out on someone. This is exactly what I was thinking. He's 17, not 27, obviously now the cheating is real and he can't pretend it never happened like he wanted to before, and in his mind the person responsible is the one that insisted that his GFS lies come to light. Obviously, his anger is misdirected. but he just needs time and patience, and a therapist. All of this is a lot to go through at just 17. He'll come around and realize just how much his mom helped him in this situation.
New Reddit story. Don't forget to smash the subscribe button now. Me, 29F, meet my ex-boss, 40M, who discovers I have a son for him while I was working. While I was working I had a fling with my boss and I ended up pregnant, which was a shock, so I quit my job and told my boyfriend, 32M now, it was he married me and I'm a SOM now. I was originally unsure on the father, but I had a suspicion it was my boss because we sometimes didn't use contraception. Yesterday I was at the beach with my kids. It was a quiet beach in the morning and I was relaxing while they were playing together. It was cold so nobody was out. Then a little boy ran past me and I thought he was my son and shouted his name, but he wasn't, and my son and his brother and sister came running to me. Then I saw another parent shout that little boy and I realized it was my boss. My boss was there and I was mentally panicking, so I stood in front of my son to block him from sight and said hi to him. Then he looked at my kids and said, "This is why you quit your job then," and laughed and said he knew I'd be a good mom. We talked, but I noticed he was looking at my son a lot and going back and forth between his son and my son. They were playing together and my son was saying how he made the best fort in the sand. My boss asked how old my son was and I said his age. He then asked me if I was pregnant before I quit my job and I admitted I was. We stood in silence for a while and he was staring at my son for too long. He sat down next to me for a while just watching them play. He then said we should have another play date at his house so we can properly talk. I'm happy in my marriage and am scared my old boss will ruin everything for me. I don't know if I should go or not. I'm confused and this was the worst situation. Comments. Whether this story is false or not, the OP and her boss are both nasty people because she had a boyfriend whom she cheated on, got pregnant and lied to for a number of years, and not to mention that her boss is married according to her comments. She outright makes everything about it herself if her affair and paternity fraud were to come to light. Oh, and not to mention that she's absolutely dependent upon her husband now that she's a SOM. I don't think I read one thing about her loving her husband simply because she loves him, but it's more about her being a SOM and not having to face consequences for her and her boss being two mean individuals. She'll be fortunate if her son doesn't get sick becoming in need of a donation of an organ from her husband. He ends up devastated because the ensuing tests proves he's not the father of this boy. She has no faith that he'll stay with her anyway due to the other two kids that she claims are also biologically his. This woman is just absolutely an evil incarnate. Time to come clean to your husband, OP. No point in digging yourself a deeper hole, there's no easy way out of this. You need to face the consequences of your lies. Tell the truth and move on. If not for your husband, then do it for your son.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so. This will help us grow. Thank you once again. You guys rock.